I think there were elements. The connection between educators, trainers and industry certainly has been a highlight, together with getting collaboration, I think, for the first time between different levels of government, industry and the broader community on focusing on how do we get the better outcomes, how do we share information, how do we all play our part. I think what the blueprint identified from the outset is there was no blame. It was really looking forward in a positive, proactive way, saying how can we do it better, how can we do it easier to improve the outcomes. And we recognised at that stage that collaboration between different agencies that historically and different bodies that historically hadn't necessarily worked well together, particularly in Northern Adelaide, was a key part. I think that has worked and worked to the point where the last government, of course, had a plan for the North, the vision for the North, or look North, which I think was one of the outcomes that eventually flowed from the blueprint in a socio-economic environmental sense about setting a vision for what the North had to do in order to get improved outcomes socially, economically, environmentally. And obviously I'm biased being still on the board of Northern Futures and being a past chair of Northern Futures. I think organisations like Northern Futures, which focuses on career development and the individual and improving and maximising opportunity for the individual to either gain employment or understand what they need to do from a training, education perspective in order to gain employment, has been fantastic. And in the process, they in turn have collaborated with governments and local government and industry in a positive, proactive way to open up pathways for individuals in the community who historically would have found it almost impossible to identify those pathways. And that's really, really a fantastic outcome. And there are a lot of people in our community in Northern Adelaide now who have a job thanks to the blueprint and thanks to the work that Northern Futures did in implementing some of those aspects of the blueprint, which were very much about improving knowledge in the community, improving understanding in the community, opening up opportunities in the community, and then maximising the chance for individuals in the community to gain access to those opportunities. That's the big tick. That's the legacy as far as I'm concerned, and I hope that can continue and be built upon going forward. I think there are a couple of areas in particular that concern me, and I suppose I'm looking at it now from a business perspective, having been chair of the business leaders group in the North as well. The first is that we haven't cracked the nut between getting all of the students, all of the young people, all of those who are unemployed or underemployed in the North, understanding what the opportunities are in industry, in business, to gain employment and so on in the North. We haven't done that. So there's a gap. There's a gap still. We've closed that gap a little bit, but we've got a long way to go. Secondly, in my view, data is power. And one of the pillars was to collect information about what we are doing in the North, what we are achieving in the North, where the gaps are, to identify whether those gaps are getting bigger or smaller, so that we've got some sense of objectively measuring success or failure. And that depends on capturing data, and we, for some reason, in Northern Adelaide cannot crack that nut. We've got different databases in different locations, not very good, I would suggest. But in industry, if we don't collect data about our markets and what our markets want, and then meet those requirements, if we don't do that research, we go broke. Yet in this field, training, career development, and so on, it seems that if we don't collect the data, so what? That the world goes on, and we'll put another band-aid over the top. We've got to get better at capturing what is the status quo out there, and then measuring performance against that. And I think, in some areas we're better than we were 10 years ago, much better. In others, we've still got a long way to go. We've still got some real cultural hang-ups about work in some particular niche communities around the region where, we're dealing with third generation unemployment or underemployment and a whole culture of not working or not wanting to work, and I think that's that upsets me as someone who's been trying to assist groups like Northern Futures and others to improve our lot over that period. We've still got pockets in the community which are, I have to say, embarrassing for us, and we've got to do something about that. There are three obvious opportunities, I think, in Northern Adelaide where there's growth happening and will happen over the next, certainly, decade. The first is in the area of defence, and we know the defence contracts have been announced, and whilst I'm not necessarily speaking about people actually working on the ships or on the planes, I am talking about the people who will provide support services to the people who are working in those areas. And I think the North can play a role in both areas. One, direct employment on the smarts and the ships and the planes and all of those sorts of things that defence needs, but equally we need to make sure we maximise the opportunities for those who support those industries going forward to do their job. And that's everything from transport and logistics to all sorts of jobs that you and I could do potentially as non-defence elite personnel. Secondly, we've got horticulture. I'm being a horticulturalist, botanist by background originally. I think the Northern Adelaide irrigation scheme and the role of that $165 million pipeline north opens up massive opportunities for, again, people directly or indirectly, to be engaged in the food sector, either growing it or value adding to it. And I think that's great for the region. I think it's capitalises on something that we have in the north, and that is, we have some very, very good soil to the north of us, and if we add water with plenty of sunshine and we maintain our clean, green environmental image and use some of the smart technologies that we're inventing, being in the dry state and the driest continent on earth, we can be world leaders in terms of food production, going forward. And in some areas we already are. I don't think we publicise it well, but we already are. And, the government's own modelling around that is about 3,500 jobs over the next decade. So that clearly is an opportunity. The third area is perhaps less value-adding from an economic perspective, but certainly represents job growth, and that is the continuation of the NDIS rollout and the fact that we've got an ageing community in Northern Adelaide, which is going to require support and services, and that means jobs in that servicing sector. And from that perspective, I think they're the three standout opportunities. On top of that, yes, there'll still be housing growth. There'll still be homes built because there's really nowhere else. If you want greenfield, there's nowhere else in Adelaide to do it. South is finished. We've got infill happening, CBD and immediately around the suburbs. But if you go north to, northern Playford, Monopara, Gawler, Roseworthy town expansion area, which has been recently announced, the future of the salt fields to Wells, Virginia, that's where the new houses will be built. So clearly there'll be construction opportunities there, which will build upon those that are already existing in the community. So I'm an optimist about Northern Adelaide. I believe really strongly in it, and I think we know more about Northern Adelaide than we did a decade ago because we have made some progress at working, on projects like Look North and so on with the government. But equally, I think we now understand, because industry, governments, community are working much better together than they did a decade ago that we've got a good foundation to build on to even do it better going forward.